Okay, that was lie number 1. Thank you, everybody. Not enough. So this is the Unenviable tutorial. I am Daniel Lindsley. You can, if you want to follow along with slides, they're up at speakerdeck/u Daniel Lindsley. I am here to prove everyone who said that there are developers that hate documentation wrong. I'm a developer, and I love writing documentation. No. I didn't say good documentation. I've written a number of decently used Python and Django libraries which pride themselves on at least good docs. Maybe not great, but good. And the reason why I pride myself on good docs is because it's really all the difference between whether a user adopts your software or not, in my opinion. You can have as shiny of a marketing sales job on the one end as you want, but if the documentation isn't good, you're not going to have buy-in from the people who actually implement what you write. And we've seen this countless times. There are pieces of software that are absolutely abysmal, that no one should ever want to actually use or have to deal with, that get sold just fine because there's great documentation and lots of good software that sits by the wayside because it doesn't have docs. So, why would I use such a strong word as unenviable? Can you believe this? A developer can pronounce that. It's pretty good, right? I practiced. Why am I trying to tell you that it's unenviable? The tutorial has the single worst job of any piece of documentation in your entire collection. So let's talk about why is it unenviable, or why do I think it, and maybe I can convince you. It's the first document that everybody sees, and people are people. Everyone makes snap judgment about things, and it's going to happen based off just this one document you kind of wrote off the cuff in a hurry to meet a deadline once. It's going to happen. It's also commonly one of the first documents written. Again, my perspective is slightly skewed because I write smaller libraries. I don't have a huge team and a big enterprise supporting me. But it's even worse than this because it's also one of the first pieces of documentation to fall out of date because you're the one writing the documentation. You're the expert, or you have access to the expert on this documentation, and none of you are referring to it. It's guaranteed that you're not looking at the tutorial every single day saying, what's wrong with this now? It doesn't happen. And because software moves so fast, documentation is frequently something that falls out of date. We all know this. Well, the tutorial suffers even worse. The tutorial has to pull in users to be effective. Essentially, your tutorials a lot of times acts as a form of marketing material. You're selling somebody on the principle that they should be using this software. It should be important to them. It'll make their life better, and it has all the features they'll need. It sets the standard. You're teaching people what you think the code or usage of this library should look like. And the scary thing is, there are people who will come in fresh off of Google, who have never seen or never really programmed before, and your example code might influence how they program for the rest of their career. You laugh, but I'm serious. There's not actually a lot of joke here. This happens to me probably once every week or two. I'll have someone who comes in and says, hey, I started with Python 2 days ago, literally. I started with Django yesterday, and now because the business is demanding it, I have to build this huge HTTP RESTful API that does all kinds of crazy business logic, and it has to be done by the end of next week. I feel bad for them. I send them pity and sympathy cards first, but then have to try and help them through. So your tutorial really may have a much broader effect than you think. It sets the tone. This is a little bit more nebulous, may sound kind of similar, but setting the tone is about what the tutorial, this first thing they're reading, says about the rest of your documentation. It's going to be, how conversational is it? What does the documentation going to look like? How is it organized? How are they going to get more information? And back to that concept of how a tutorial is essentially a form of marketing materials, you have to describe enough but not too much. You have to kind of pull them in. You have to leave them essentially wanting more information, but if you drown them in information, no one is going to live to tell the tale, and you're going to be a sad shipwreck. So in short, a tutorial has an unenviable job because it has to be everything to everyone, all the time. Holy crap, forget it, mic drop, we're done. I was told by the organizers I can't do that, so we actually have to talk about how we can make a tutorial better. So, because we're people, it's so easy to focus on the negative. So let's start with the negative. What shouldn't you do with a tutorial? These things are going to seem very obvious. You're going to see them all the time. Maybe you have done some of these things. And it's going to be obvious to you because if you've read other people's documentation, you're going to see these kinds of glaring holes. So for instance, READMEs are not a tutorial. They never have been, they never will be. Don't do this. You do this, I will find you. Unless your software is so narrow and so focused, chances are good you can't express the full functionality of the software you're dealing with in just a README. Not only that, READMEs are meant to be organizational. They're meant to tie together a lot of different things like authorship, licensing, change logs. You may find examples in a README, but it's not a cohesive piece of documentation that is meant for people to start a project with. Showing off every single feature. How many of us have written tutorials that list every single thing it can do? Shame. This is what API docs are for. Experienced documentarians don't need me to tell you this, but you don't need to go method by method. Just give enough. Immediately deep diving too far into the specialty portions of the tech, let's be frank, if the person on the other end knows all the details, they don't want to be implementing your thing. They're probably off writing their own library right now. So your software solves a problem. Chances are good they don't want all the information up front, and they just want to be able to fix it and move on. Writing just for the advanced user. You, all of you, you're all the advanced user. You are all the expert in whatever you're working on right now. You know way more than I do. And because of that, there can be gaps in what you write because you're not the target audience necessarily. You already know everything. There's going to be gaps and things that you're going to just gloss over that need more explanation than they have. So it takes vigilance on your part to recognize when you're doing this. So, bad stuff out of the way. Doesn't that feel good? Now you have everything you need to remember from this talk, and you can gloss over for the rest of it, right? Let's talk about some considerations for a tutorial. We'll talk about concepts first, and then we'll talk about actually building and organizing later on. So, considerations. Like I said, people are going to come straight in from Google, and it will be the first thing that not only the novice user sees, but the expert will see as well. So, again, this everything to everyone applies. So it's something to consider when writing a tutorial. You have to prove that the software is worthwhile. It's not just showing examples. If you just show examples, you end up with something that's kind of disjointed and not very friendly. A great example is a piece of software that, let's say, talks over HTTP and sends RESTful data back. It may be able to handle lots of varieties of data, but the average developer can write something that just kind of spits out JSON, no problem, and may not see any value in this. But writing something that handles all sorts of different MIME types is hard to do. And so there's value there, but if they don't know about the value, they can't move forward. A good tutorial should be lunch hourable. You should be able to have someone sit down, pick up a piece of software, and work through a whole tutorial within their lunch hour and have something working by the end of it. And even better if it works well or suits their use case. You're going to end up showing off what are essentially high power to weight ratio APIs here, things that take a lot of things for granted or assume a certain configuration and can just move forward and make things go smoothly. Again, you should leave them wanting more. The point of a tutorial is to give an introduction. Here are the core concepts of things that you'll be implementing and the things you'll need to know. And keeping yourself in check so that you don't go too far and you don't exhaust everything it can do takes effort, and it's hard to do. I screw this one up all the time. So, now that we've kind of talked about what we should be thinking about when we do this, how do you actually construct it? I'm not going to tell you specifically how to write your tutorial because you're the expert, not me. I hope to actually read your tutorials and learn about what you are building. But here's what I think about when I'm constructing a tutorial. This is a lie. This is not actually number one. I did it number one in my slides, but it's not really the case. Because time and again today, what we've seen through all the talks here is that one of the most important things to have as somebody who's writing the documentation is empathy. You need to be able to put yourself in the position of another and see how they would see the subject that you're trying to explain. Because if you can't do that, and if you can't be empathetic, you're going to have a much more diluted message and much more diluted writing that comes across. We'll pretend this is number two, and I know how to write slides. Keeping it simple is one of the most important things you can do. Start as basic as possible with as few assumptions as you can. And this is a great way to show off like the porcelain bits of an application, the things that like, drop in 3 lines of code and a bunch of stuff just works. Or say you import requests from Kenneth and you just make HTTP work. It's those things that go quickly. You want to start simple. Again, same kind of concept, but this is talking about the start of the tutorial. Start with a simple example. I hate minimum viable product. So start with enough to get something very basically working. Again, high-level APIs. And these are the 80% cases. This is what most people will probably encounter at least the very first time they use something. Small iterations. So you've started simple. You have just a couple lines of code, or if you have Java, you have 40 lines of code in an XML document. And what you want to do is you want to build on what you've taught them. You want them to have a sense of accomplishment on what they're building. So after you start with that small chunk of code, add something to it. Something that changes a configuration or enables a more advanced piece of functionality and essentially gives the user both this feeling of, hey, I learned something and oh my gosh, this is cool. You're also teaching them how other things may be applied. Friendly prose. Unless you have an edict handed down to you from on high, please don't write in stuffy, jargon-filled text. No one likes reading the manual that Matthew dropped earlier today. No IBM mainframe tomes. I'm sorry if anyone works at IBM. Because it's not engaging. This concept of, someone mentioned earlier, and I'm a dunce for not remembering who, but the idea of developer attention or attention spans, this applies very heavily to a tutorial because you're writing something that people are going to judge your software based upon. And they probably don't have a lot of time. They're probably exercising a bunch of different options. And if they can't see if it'll work for them relatively quickly, chances are good you're going to lose their attention. So conversational tone goes a long, long way if you can do it. This one's hard because, again, you're the advanced user. It's really easy to write things in as short as job possible because you've got a deadline and you've got other stuff to work on. But thinking about the newbie and thinking about people who have no experience is really, really difficult. And like I said, I sit and lurk in IRC and I literally get this once a week from basically every project I have that I provide support on. And that's, like 4 projects now. It's crazy the amount of developer churn and the assumptions you thought you could make that you can't make because of this, because it is such a dynamic, changing field. People who are technical are in demand, and they are trying to solve increasingly difficult problems. On the other hand, you do have the pro users. They're going to land on your tutorial. These are the people who are looking to evaluate quickly whether it'll work for them or not. And you want your tutorial to be skimmable. You want an experienced person who's either writing documentation or evaluating to be able to skim down to what they remember seeing last week when they first evaluated and verifying that it is still the case. And knowing when to stop. If you go too far, you will basically just exhaust someone or drown them in details. And a good indicator for me is usually as soon as I've gone off the 80% case or I'm starting to get into something that involves more configuration or something more advanced, it's time to stop with the tutorial and let the rest of the documentation fill the void. So I said we were done with negativity, but we're not. Common pitfalls. These are things that other people do and that I do, and I welcome you all to point me out where I've gone astray. Making assumptions. We've covered this but this still bites me. I know these things, but it still bites me. And the best coping mechanism I have for this is to find somebody who doesn't even work in tech. Find someone who is just your average smart layperson, hand them the documentation and say, please have a read through. People are smart. They can follow things just fine. They may not know how to implement the code, but they can point out points where things just go completely off the rails or they have no idea what you're talking about and can give you essentially a fresh look on what you've written. Diving too deep too quickly. Again, another thing we've covered, but people gloss over. And if they gloss over, it doesn't just necessarily stop there. That negative reaction they have can actually bite you. Either them, if you have commercial software, they make like another company's software, or they may start talking badly about your software to other people. And influence goes a long way in today's increasingly connected world. I hate using that term, but it really is true. The internet has taken opinions and made them something that can be transferred instantly to a broad audience rather than just single person to single person. Flip side of that coin, unfortunately, is that you can show not enough. And if you go too shallow, it looks like what you have written or what your company is providing doesn't do what the user needs. Most people won't source dive if they have access to source at all. And so you need to be explicit in what it can do without drowning them, which is hard. All examples, no prose. I am guilty as heck on this one. And I have to, again, thank Matthew, because he showed you all this web framework called Bottle, right? In his documentation. I wrote a Python web framework before Bottle came out. And in fact, Bottle is actually a derivative fork. It was forked because I didn't write enough docs. I wrote an example directory, dropped a bunch of scripts in it, and said, here you go, and then went about what I was working on otherwise. It wasn't enough for other people. Bottle picked it up, changed a couple of the features that they wanted, and added tons of wonderful documentation, and their user growth just absolutely blossomed while my project sat unloved for the last 4 years. So it really does happen. And leaving a user hanging at the end. Yes, you should not go too far. Yes, you should not flood them with detail. But what you want to do is find common things that people are looking for once they finish that material. The questions that come up most frequently in the issue trackers or on IRC or in mailing lists or whatever, and start pointing them to those locations so that they can find more information without having to be an expert. So, now what? You've written your tutorial, everything is wonderful, you've taken half of these things seriously and said, Daniel, you're wrong about the rest. Now it's time to write the guides. You should be writing topical guides that cover essentially subject matter in more depth, but are essentially basically tutorials, but for a given topic or for a different set of functionality. And they are the things that should dive deeper into how you configure or how you enable more advanced behavior. Links everywhere. If you're printing on paper, I'm so sorry. But for the rest of you, if your documentation is in electronic form, you have no excuse. And this goes a long way so that your tutorial can be short, it can be more brief, but it can show a lot of functionality because things can be accessed through links if they want more information about some kind of functionality. Peer review. Run it past your coworkers, not just non-technical people. Now find technical people who can give you a better overall understanding of what you've written and where the gaps are. You're going to make mistakes. There's things you're going to miss, and peer review helps make it better. And making sure help channels are available. How many times have you started using some piece of software only to find you have no clue where to ask questions about it? I've done it a lot of times. It's really hard. You have this great introductory piece of material. Introduce your help channels at the same time so that people can get support, so that they can report bugs, and find a way to make them be able to connect to each other. Because lots of times what you'll find is users will start helping each other when it's something that they've struggled with or that they spent a lot of time on. And that's free support for you. It's less overhead and churn, and it enables a sense of community. These people have essentially a common bond. They're dealing with my crappy software. And it starts building community. And that's all I have. Thank you. Questions?
So we are running.
No questions. Troy has said no questions.
I didn't say no questions.
I like no questions.
Hello, hello. Oh, there it is. Okay, sweet. So yeah, we have time for just 2 questions because our schedule is kind of running late. So I'm going to take this one back here and then one more.
So you talked about writing for 2 different audiences, the beginners and also the advanced, as kind of a strategy. And I'm wondering if you can just mention a few of the tactics that you've actually used to like put that into place in a document. Like, what does that mean? Like a summary at the top, or
No.
how do you make that happen for both audiences?
Okay, so the question is, you have novices in prose. How do you juggle writing a document that serves both of their needs? And how do I address this? When I write a tutorial, I try to put myself in the newbie's position. I write, and again, this is my software, not necessarily a broader audience. So if you're dealing with something that's already written, this is harder. But writing something that a newbie would want to do. What is the bare minimum it takes to get this up and running? Write out the code so that you have something that works, and then flesh out the prose around it. The advanced user is probably only going to care about the code, or they may not even be looking at that section, and they're certainly not reading all the paragraphs. But a novice user may not understand what is a patch HTTP request. And explaining to them that patch provides partial updates and was specified as part of an RFC from 10 years ago is something that not the average Joe may not know but may need for their job. On the other hand, your pro user or your advanced user will just be like, oh yeah, it's patch support. Great, glad it has it, check. And so I intentionally write things as novice-friendly as I can to start with, and then flesh out more details as necessary. Another valid approach is take the advanced user standpoint, write the minimum you can, and then identify all your assumptions and start fleshing out prose around that.
And one more question back here.
Oh.
Is this on? Oh, okay. Have you considered putting the videos up on YouTube? For my particular open source project, I put up a video and 7,000 people have seen it. I have no idea why, but it's very effective in communication.
So have I considered putting things up on YouTube? Yes. In fact, actually, if you go to a couple of my projects' sites, they have vanity URLs that basically are like, hey, this is my application, this is how you use it. If you look at the HTML source, there's a chunk in that it's like screencast goes here. Yeah, it's commented. And the reason why is that screencasts take a lot of time to produce and have a smooth delivery and nice, essentially a nice amount of content. And it's, you also need software to record it with. You need the hardware, microphone and stuff. And it can be really, really effective if it's done right. And I've done poor ones and they've been really, really bad. So written documentation is, as we've already covered here, more easily translated. It's easier to search on. And it's generally less effort to produce. But yeah, producing screencasts is great when you can do it.
Thanks so much. I actually have a little comment. I'm answering a question myself. So
that was
I know,
cute.
I don't get to say anything, though. Yeah, I'm just introducing everybody. Anyway, my comment is that if you've gone and you're starting to write your tutorial as a developer or as somebody working with a developer, and you find that you can't make it short and sweet to do something that a user cares about, you probably should reevaluate your API. It's a good fact check to sit there and look at your tutorial and go, why is this so hard? There you go. Okay.
Indeed.
Now you can clap for him. Thank you.
Thank you.